Good afternoon. On behalf of the local organizing committee, I would like to welcome you to the 18th International Congress on MDS, myelodysplastic syndromes, in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. We all hope that you have had safe travels, and we, Saskia Langemeijer from Radboud University and myself from the Amsterdam University in Amsterdam, are very honored to chair this conference, which is the most prestigious conference fully dedicated to MDS. As a small country, we are pleased that the MDS Foundation selected us for organizing this event, and we are proud to be part of the MDS community. As you may know, several scientists from the Netherlands and physicians are heavily involved in several aspects of MDS pathogenesis, focusing on stromal niche, inflammation, innate and adaptive immunity. Next, we try at least to contribute to diagnostics by implementing the use of flow cytometry, although still not generally accepted, as well as molecular biology in MDS and clonal hematopoiesis. Within our HOVEM SAC Nordic collaborative groups, we set up several investigator-initiated clinical trials in both low and high-risk MDS, including AML. We are grateful to our Dutch mentor, Professor Theo de Witte, focusing his career mainly on stem cell transplantation in MDS, and later chairing the European MDS Registry and the MDS Right Horizon 2020 program. We are also happy that he will join on Saturday to meet friends. We are proud to be part of so many working groups, such as the International Working Group on Prognostic Markers. They meet already this afternoon. The International Consortium in MDS, the European Registries, the EMSCO Working Group, as well as working groups within the European Leukemia Net, and recently founded the EHA I4MDS Working Group, stressing that the MDS community is really crossing boundaries. Therefore, we are delighted to offer you a state-of-the-art conference on MDS and related diseases, trying to cover fundamental questions, translational science, and to discuss old and newer treatment strategies with a high level of educational content to cover the needs for our esteemed younger students and physicians. To do so, we provide all types of sessions, such as traditional plenary and parallel sessions, separate workshops, started already this afternoon, 6 guided debate sessions early in the mornings, meet the expert sessions and guided poster sessions, and, as a tryout this year, 2 rapid-fire oral sessions based on selected poster abstracts moderated by well-known MDS-dedicated rapid speakers to make it even more vibrant. Finally, 2 excellent keynote speakers are selected discussing artificial intelligence in MDS and latest advances in treatment modalities. To optimize interaction between colleagues and friends, you are all invited to join the networking event. Still some tickets available, not only to gather with old friends, but also to make new ones at a special location in Rotterdam, the Euromast, a short walk from the convention center and most hotels, with live music by Jessentials, with a panoramic view over Rotterdam City. Thanks to all faculty members for their enthusiastic prompt commitment to the conference, and to you as participants by joining us the coming days in Rotterdam. Also thanks to the logistic team Lolita and Netta from the Kenneth Group, and Leah and Moshe from the MDS Foundation to make this possible, next to our esteemed sponsors. On behalf of Saskia and myself, we wish you a fruitful and inspiring meeting. And I'm pleased to hand over to the president of the MDS Foundation, Stephen Nimer.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm always privileged to represent the MDS Foundation as chairman of the board of directors. We have a number of boards, a nursing board, a medical and scientific advisory board, a development board, and it's thrilling always to get together every other year at these international symposium, as well as the regional symposiums that we've been having over the last few years. I have a privilege today also to introduce the new CEO of the MDS Foundation, Peggy Torney, who's here up on stage, and she'll be sharing these introductory remarks with me. I'll go first and turn things over to her and ask her to come up here. So first, this is the 18th Congress. This has been such an important event for us all to get together and to share unpublished data, to talk about our perspectives on this very difficult to treat disease, difficult to understand biologically, and we continue to make great progress as a result of bringing people together. And I want to thank the Congress scientific chairs, Matteo de Witt, Saskia Langemeijer, and Arjan van der Loosdrecht. Also the local organizing committee, the 5 individuals who are listed on this slide. We were talking earlier a little bit, and I'll put a shout out if anybody has some photos from the Innsbruck, Austria event in 1988, held 37 years ago, before some of you were born. And you can see here that we've had some very interesting places to visit, and we're looking forward to the 2027 conference as well, which will be in Leipzig. The MDS Foundation is a global nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting patients, caregivers, and healthcare professionals. And for our patients affected by MDS, which we know to be a rare and life-threatening bone marrow disorder, and since our founding more than 30 years ago, we are steadfast in our mission to advance research, provide critical education and support services, and function to improve the treatment options for those impacted by MDS. And I come here today from the United States, and I just want to say that we are all allies in this war against myelodysplastic syndromes. So our mission is to improve the lives of those affected by MDS, and the vision is to envision a world where every MDS patient has access to the best possible care, treatments, and support. And as we know, many MDS patients are not treated by experts in the disease, and so the outcomes certainly are not the same. And we've debated many things about MDS, including whether to tell patients they have cancer or not. And so we continue to evolve our mission in the foundation. We have a global reach and impact. We've served over 16,000 patients through educational programs and resources. We've given out over $1 million specifically for Young Investigator Awards. We have 210 global centers of excellence representing 40 countries. We also have professional education. These congresses, the regional symposium, ASH symposium, nursing education, and we continue to evolve using social media and other websites to engage both professionals, patients, and caregivers. You've heard this meeting is already off to a great start. We've had a number of workshops, meeting of the IWGPM, and we continue to work with MDS MPN, International Working Group, and others to advance our mission. We are going to give out on Saturday some additional Young Investigator grants. One of the 2 recipients of the award is here and will be giving a talk and receive his award. We really have been focusing on how to increase our Young Investigator grants to get more people into studying MDS. We have supported 24 researchers, including Dr. van de Loosdrecht, who was a recipient of one a little while ago, and again have awarded over $1 million. So, I look forward to having an opportunity to meeting more of you and for the entire foundation to continue its mission of bringing people together to advance our research and the clinical options for our patients. And I'd like to invite Peggy Ann up to the podium, and she'll continue with the presentation from the foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nimer, and thank you all for being here with us. I just want to talk a little bit about some of the patient and caregiver support and education programs that the foundation offers, in addition to all that we do that Dr. Nimer spoke about in regards to healthcare professionals and our research. We offer a variety of both in-print and digital resources to help ensure that patients have access to the information they need to both understand and then to make the best decisions regarding their care. We also believe that by providing them with this education, they can have more enriched conversations with all of you and the rest of their healthcare team. And so we offer in-person education programs, webinars, videos. We provide our resources in different languages. We also are really focused on ensuring patients understand clinical trials and what options are available to them. We have support lines and support services for them. We also conduct patient surveys that we encourage you to reach out to us if you'd like to participate in them. We already have over 200 patients who participated in our survey for this year to help us really gain better insights into what patients need and identify gaps in care that perhaps the foundation or together we can fill those gaps for them. And I'm excited to also talk a little bit about our new MDS Exchange. Our MDS Exchange is an online community that provides the opportunity for patients and caregivers to really connect with one another, provide support services, connect them to the MDS Foundation's resources. It is powered by the latest technology and AI, and so we can really glean different insights and sentiments from patients to understand what's really top of mind, what symptoms are patients experiencing, what side effects from medication. We can pose different questions to the online community, again, to really create an interactive community in which we can glean better insights from the patients. So I encourage you all to connect with us and to encourage your patients to become active in the exchange as well. We also offer a Center of Excellence program. As Dr. Nimer mentioned, we have 210 MDS Centers of Excellence in 40 countries around the world. And these really enable us to ensure that patients have access to experts in MDS care and that they can really receive the best care for their disease. We also offer professional membership opportunities, and so if you aren't a professional member of the MDS Foundation, I encourage you to join the program. It enables you to get free shipping of all the materials I mentioned earlier to your institution, and it provides discounts to the leukemia and research. It enables your young investigators to apply for our grants that Dr. Nimer mentioned that we're giving out later this week. And so I do encourage you to learn more about the program and see if you would be interested in joining. I do want to take a quick moment to thank all of our sponsors. Without them, programs like this wouldn't be possible, and so I want to thank them for all that they do for the foundation, but most importantly for the MDS community. And then just a few quick housekeeping things. We do have our networking dinner on Friday, and so do hope you can join us. As was mentioned earlier, it has beautiful 360-degree views of the city and also has access to the observation deck. And so it'll be a great opportunity for you to connect with one another, make new friends, connect with old ones, and so encourage you to join us there. And then lastly, just want to make sure that you save the date for 2027, which will be in Germany. We hope to see many of you and hope you encourage your colleagues to join us as well, as it'll be another fantastic program. And so again, just want to say thank you for being here with us. We hope you find the program informative, engaging, and that you take a lot out of it. I know I'm personally looking forward to meeting so many of you this week and to working alongside of you in the weeks, months, and obviously years ahead. So thank you for being here.
Now, just before announcing our keynote speaker of tonight, I'd like to have a few words of logistics. We very welcome the discussion during these sessions. So if you have any questions after tonight's talk or talks during the future sessions, please walk up to one of the microphones, or you can enter your questions in the MDS app. And to do that, you can go to the session where you're in at the moment and click on the interactive features. Then you can just enter your question and we can ask it for you here on the stage. And then I would like to introduce our keynote speaker. Professor Della Porta is head of the leukemia unit at Humanitas Cancer Center in Milan and the Genomics and Hematological Neoplasms Lab. And his lab focuses on clarifying the mechanisms of disease onset and progression of myeloid neoplasms, most importantly myelodysplastic syndromes, and also to rapidly translate these findings into clinical tools. And to do this, his lab makes use of, among other things, artificial intelligence. Today he will discuss what artificial intelligence can mean for us as hematologists. So a very, very challenging task, but I'm sure he will be up to it. So please, Professor Della Porta.
So good evening to everyone, and first of all, let me thank all the organizers of this meeting and MDS Foundation for this kind invitation. So in general terms, the application of artificial intelligence in medicine is expected to improve clinical decision-making process, thus finally leading to a more efficient and sustainable management of the patient. And during this presentation, I would like to describe and show a joint initiative from different technological networks with the aim to define an innovative ecosystem to improve MDS patient care. So the core idea for this initiative relies on the innovative concept of digital twin. In general terms, digital twins are replicas for complex systems that are created by high-resolution models, in many cases including high-quality real-world data, with the aim to better understand how this complex system works and to see what happens in specific simulation scenarios. And when this concept is applied to medicine, digital twin involves a modeling of a specific human complex disease with the aim to finally generate new clinical evidence and support a more efficient and sustainable clinical decision-making process within the framework of personalized medicine. In this context, I would like to introduce MDS Copilot project that is an innovative digital twin powered by generative artificial intelligence with the aim to boost personalized medicine in hematology with a specific focus on MDS patients. And as you can see here, by a specific training on a large amount of high-quality real-world clinical and biological data, MDS Copilot will provide an innovative and efficient platform to support clinical decisions, especially in complex clinical scenarios, as well as it will provide specific solution to accelerate the conduction and to optimize the conduction of clinical trials. MDS Copilot Digital Twin is compliant with the WHO guidance on the right deployment of artificial intelligence in medicine. It means that this platform is based on transparent technologies that are able to provide a good understanding of the AI models with a specific focus on clinical interpretability and explainability. All the algorithms are externally validated in independent patient population. And last but not least, all the technologies included in the platform are fully compliant with the protection data regulations. So in order to provide an efficient digital twin to guide the clinical decision-making process for MDS, we need a large and high-quality basis in terms of training data. And to date, data source for digital twin for MDS is provided by around 20,000 MDS patients in which clinical and biological data were collected from different international high-quality clinical networks that are represented here. In terms of type of information that are the basis for training AI algorithms, as you can see here, we included both disease-related features as well as patient-related information. And I would like to specifically stress the potential clinical relevance to include patient-reported outcomes as a training source for the digital twin model. And the reason is that we know very well in the context of MDS patients that the inclusion of patient-reported outcomes into the clinical decision-making process is associated with several clinical advantages, including a potential refinement of the prognostic stratification of the patient, the possibility to consider into a specific decision individual patient preferences and experiences, to allow an early detection of symptoms and treatment-related side effects, and finally, the possibility to facilitate interventions to improve quality of life of this challenging patient population. So a potential limitation of this data source for training MDS digital twin is that to date, the great majority of the clinical and biological information are collected only at the time of diagnosis. And we know very well that in order to improve the generation of new clinical evidence in MDS patients, we need for specific actions that are essentially two. The first point is that we need to improve the access and to improve the sharing process of real-world data. And the second point, even more important, is that we have to shift from a traditional collection of data at the time of diagnosis to a prospective collection of information that are longitudinal across different disease stage and treatment strategies. In order to provide a practical example for the clinical relevance to account for longitudinal data in generating new clinical evidence in MDS clinical setting, I would refer to the study and analysis of p53 dysfunction in this patient population. We know very well that some years ago, the IWG-PM group analyzed a large data set with high-quality clinical and genomic information collected essentially at the time of diagnosis, thus providing important clinical insights about the clinical relevance of the allelic status of TP53 gene in terms of identifying a subgroup of patients with poor prognosis and resistant to conventionally available treatments. More recently, taking advantage of the availability of a large amount of longitudinal data, we were able to add some new information about the concept of P53 dysfunction in this patient population. And for instance, the availability of longitudinal data allowed us to define that monoallelic and biallelic inactivation represent disease stages occurring as a multi-hit process during the natural history of the disease. Again, we were able to define a distinct immunosuppressive profile that is associated with the disease progression in MDS with P53 dysfunction, which may also provide a basis for the definition of innovative treatment opportunities. And last but not least, the availability of longitudinal data allowed us to define a new mechanism that is not related to the presence of mutation in TP53 gene, but still associated with the induction of P53 dysfunction in MDS patient, thus providing evidence for an additional proportion of individuals associated with very poor prognosis. So, according to this evidence, we have to really try to shift from conventional studies based only on information collected at the time of diagnosis to prospective longitudinal data collection. What is the possible solution to face with this clinical challenge? And again, in my personal perspective, the possible solution can be provided by new technologies and in particular by artificial intelligence through the innovative concept of federated learning. Basically, federated learning is a new way to address the analysis of complex data coming from different sources in a way that is fully privacy compliant and in a way that allows to provide a collaborative training of AI algorithms without the need to share data across different institutions. And in this context, in the framework of GenoMed for All technological consortiums, we recently developed an innovative federated learning platform that is aimed to analyze the complex data coming from different clinical centers, specifically conceived to be applied in the field of hematology. This platform is fully based on open source technologies and freely available for scientific purposes. And in this context, a discussion was started with MDS Foundation to potentially use this kind of platform to be implemented within MDS Foundation Center of Excellence as a basis to boost the collection of longitudinal, high-quality clinical and biological data for patients affected with myelodysplastic syndromes. In order to provide a practical example for the clinical utility of this federated learning approach to analyze data, we federated a model for molecular IPSS across 5 different European centers. And as you can appreciate it, the federated model is associated with a performance in terms of accuracy in predicting clinical outcome that was comparable with a traditional model trained on a central repository, but with a clear advantage to avoid any data sharing across different institutions. In the second part of the presentation, I would like to mention some information about the possible use of MDS Copilot as a practical tool to improve personalized medicine in MDS. And as a first point, I would like to address the possibility by this digital twin platform to improve the classification of MDS patients as well as the prognostic assessment of this population. We know that in this context, morphological and histological features are clearly relevant in order to provide an accurate stratification and classification of the patient, but we know that the large-scale morphological data are underused in our clinical practice. In this context, digital pathology is a specific application of artificial intelligence to tumor biopsies that is able to extract numerical features from complex morphological and histological biopsies and to define specific patterns that can be used in order to refine the diagnosis of the patient, the prognostic assessment, and the prediction of response to treatment. In this context, we started an initiative in order to check whether digital pathology can improve the diagnostic and prognostic stratification across different myeloid neoplasms, including MDS patients. And as you can see here, we analyzed more than 1,600 patients with various myeloid neoplasms in which clinical and molecular information were available together with digital images from bone marrow cytology and histological stainings, with three aims that are to develop an AI-based diagnostic system for myeloid neoplasms, to try to predict specific genomic profile based on morphological features, and finally to try to integrate digital pathology features into innovative prognostic models for these diseases. We analyzed different foundation models in order to check for the best way to extract information associated with the clinical value, and GigaPath foundation model was the best one in terms of capturing clinically relevant features in myeloid neoplasms. And by using this approach, we defined a deep learning model for the classification of myeloid neoplasms. And as you can see here, this model based on morphological features extracted by digital pathology was associated with a correct prediction of the clinical diagnosis in the great majority of the patients, thus meaning that extracted features by digital pathology may capture clinically relevant information. As a second point, we observed that specific genomic profile were predicted by digital pathology features with high accuracy, thus meaning that these findings are able to capture also the biological background across various myeloid neoplasms. So we thus decided to combine all this information coming from morphological features into innovative prognostic models in order to try to improve the accuracy of the prediction of clinical outcome of interest, And as you can see here, adding this morphological information to the conventional models based on clinical and molecular data allowed to significantly improve the capability to capture information about the individual probability of overall survival as well as of the individual risk of leukemic evolution. So in other terms, this model, including AI-based morphological features, outperformed molecular IPSS in terms of capturing clinically relevant information at individual patient level. In this context, I would like also to mention a new initiative that will be supported by the European Hematology Association that is called the Patroclus Initiative, that is basically a new consortium that is founded by EHA Innovation Grant Call with 3 aims. As a first point, we will deploy the federated learning platform that we described before in a large number of clinical hematological European centers, with the aim to use innovative AI algorithms to create next-generation diagnostic and prognostic tools without the need of sharing data across different institutions. As a second aim, we will develop a comprehensive data set integrating digital pathology in addition to conventional clinical and molecular features in order to possibly define next-generation classification systems across different hematological diseases. And last but not least, this network will be a platform for new educational events in order to improve diagnostic standards and reproducibility across Europe. MDS Copilot will act as a formal clinical decision support system. In general terms, a clinical decision support system is a computer-based tool that may assist clinicians in making complex decisions, specifically in those clinical scenarios that are associated with the lack of evidence from randomized clinical trial, by providing real-time patient-specific information and clinical recommendation. The ideal technological requirement for an AI-based clinical decision support system are essentially 3. As a first point, the model should be able to provide a representation, a reliable representation of the natural history of the disease, as well as the model should be able to represent the specific clinical effect of a treatment. Then we need for a sort of virtual platform for randomized clinical trials. So in other terms, we should randomize virtually each individual patient according to his specific clinical and molecular features across different treatment policy. And last but not least, the system should be able to define what is the optimal policy in terms of optimization of clinical benefit for each individual patient. In order to provide a practical example of a clinical decision support system powered by artificial intelligence, we decided to face with one of the most challenging situations in terms of clinical decision for MDS, that is the choice of the optimal timing of transplantation in eligible patients. And in this context, we aimed to generate and validate a decision support system for providing a specific answer to this clinical question. In MDS, based on both clinical and molecular information as provided by molecular IPSS, and to compare the outcome of transplantation policies based on molecular IPSS versus conventional revised IPSS to measure the proportion of patients in which the timing of transplantation will change by introducing molecular data in the decision process. The study population for this specific clinical decision support system included more than 7,000 MDS patients from a large international collaboration, including around 2,000 patients receiving allogeneic stem cell transplantation, and in which comprehensive clinical and molecular information were available. And the results of the model are represented here. As you can see here, based on IPSS molecular policy, in patients with moderate low risk, there is a clear benefit for a delayed transplantation strategy, while in those individuals that were stratified into moderate high, high, and very high risk categories, immediate transplantation was associated with a maximized life expectancy. In order to check for the potential clinical utility of this tool, we provided two different simulation analyses. As a first point, we modeled a decision analysis based on molecular versus conventional IPSS, and we observed that the transplantation policy changed in around 20% of the patient by introducing this kind of support system. And even more importantly, we simulated a scenario for the life expectancy of MDS population eligible for allogeneic stem cell transplantation, in which we compared life expectancy for the optimal transplantation policy based on different prognostic tools, molecular versus revised IPSS, and the optimal life expectancy for the population was associated with a decision based on molecular information. We discussed that an ideal digital twin for a clinical application in medicine should be associated with a full explainability to the final users that are patients and clinicians. In order to facilitate the access and the interpretation of the results of this model, we defined a web tool application that is reported here, in which, as you can see, we can introduce specific patient characteristics. The model is able to provide a clinical recommendation about the optimal timing of transplantation, and even more importantly, to provide a clinical explanation of the features that were associated with a specific clinical recommendation. The idea is to use this technology in a larger clinical scenario to predict different individual response rate across treatment strategies in MDS, the optimal timing of therapeutical intervention, to provide a comparison about the clinical effect and clinical benefit of different treatment policies in an individual patient, and importantly, to provide some information on quality of life according to both the natural history of the disease and a specific treatment. This will be the interactive platform for using this kind of digital twin. Again, you can provide a specific selection for clinical and molecular information of an individual patient, and the clinician can navigate across different clinical domains, the diagnosis, the prognostication, the treatment strategy, in order to check for the most reliable decision in terms of patient management. So in the last part of the presentation, I would like to present some insights about the possible use of Copilot platform as a basis to accelerate and optimize the conduction of clinical trials in MDS. So we know that randomized clinical trials are the gold standard in order to generate new evidence in medicine, and this is also true for MDS patient population, of course. But we know that this very important tool to generate evidence may have some limitation under specific clinical scenarios, mainly including rare diseases, patients with major unmet clinical needs, and disease arising in elderly people that have a limited opportunity to be enrolled into a conventional clinical trial. And for MDS patients, we can realize that MDS match all these three clinical critical scenarios. So a possible solution in order to provide an acceleration of the generation of evidence by clinical trials in MDS is to introduce real-world high-quality data as a part of the clinical development of a drug or a specific therapeutic strategy. And in this context, the good news is that both FDA and EMA provided specific initiatives to support the use of patient registries and repositories for generate high-quality real-world data that can be used for regulatory purposes. And as you can see here, there is an increasing number of use cases in which external real-world high-quality data were used in order to accelerate the approval process of innovative treatment opportunities for patients affected with hematological diseases. So we have a good opportunity to include real-world data as a part of the regulatory process for accelerating clinical trials, but the reality is that we know very well that only a minimal proportion of healthcare data is currently used for scientific purposes. And the reasons are mainly related, for sure, on privacy limitations, lack of harmonization across different sources, and by the fact that data are not structured and are often dispersed. So again, we are facing with a major challenge in terms of improving the design of clinical trials. And again, I think, at least my personal perspective, that the solution can be offered by new technologies, and in particular by the technologies to generate synthetic data that is included in MDS Copilot Digital Twin. In general terms, synthetic data are artificial data generated by an AI algorithm that is trained to learn all the essential clinical and statistical characteristics of a real data set. It is important to underline that synthetic data are not a copy of real-world ones, and importantly, since they are not real data, they are not regulated by particular limitations, so they can be easily accessed and shared. The major advantages in terms of possible reuse of synthetic data for scientific purposes are listed here. Synthetic data are privacy compliant by definition. No loss of information is associated with the generation process. A synthetic patient is associated with the advantage of avoid missing information, and we can generate in a dynamic way specific population of synthetic data according to specific criteria that are associated with the requirement of the clinical or biological questions to be addressed. In order to try to provide a proof of concept for the clinical utility of this technology, we generated 3,000 synthetic patients starting from IWG-PM publicly available dataset with the aim to compare clinical and molecular features between synthetic and real patient population. And the results are reported here. Basically, you can appreciate that synthetic data are associated with the same distribution of clinical features as the real ones, and even more importantly, the frequency and distribution of the most commonly reported gene mutation and chromosomal abnormalities are also comparable between the two sources of data. In addition, synthetic data are able to capture the complex association among genes and cytogenetic abnormalities that are founded in the real patient population. And finally, the synthetic patient can recapitulate the longitudinal natural history of the disease, and as you can see here, the distribution of the clinical outcome according to revised IPSS risk categories is again comparable to that of a real patient. Basing on these encouraging results, we developed a generator for synthetic data that is able to create up to 10,000 MDS patients, including more than 250 clinical, molecular, and outcome features, and the generation can be adapted to specific requirement of the basic clinical or translational research question. By using the currently available technology, as you can see here, the clinical and genomic fitness of the synthetic data are quite good. That means that synthetic data are able to recapitulate most of the clinical and biological value of a real patient, as well as they are associated with a strong privacy preservability. So the most fascinating potential clinical application of this technology, in my personal perspective, is to potentially replace in the future the need to enroll a real patient in the control arm of randomized clinical trials. And in order to provide a proof of concept for this possible opportunity, we used an academic study from the Italian Foundation of MDS that was specifically aimed to capture the clinical benefit of luspatercept in MDS with ring sideroblast. and we generated a comparable number of synthetic patients starting from the RIAS one, with the final aim to compare the reliability of the statistical analysis to recapitulate all the clinical primary and secondary endpoint of the real study. And as you can see here, the synthetic population provided the same results in terms of clinical benefit evaluation across all the clinical endpoints of the study. Again, supporting the concept that this technology is able to capture the great majority of the clinical and statistical value of real patients. So in the future, a platform like MDS Copilot will provide the opportunity, starting from a large amount of certified and high-quality real-world data, to generate specific control arm population according to specific clinical characteristics and inclusion criteria according to the need of each individual clinical trial. So to conclude, modeling disease and patient-related features within a digital twin platform has the potential to improve the management of the patient affected with an MDS. MDS Copilot is the first international initiative that aims to define a digital twin platform for clinical use in MDS clinical scenario. We discussed that improved access to real-world data and the collection of longitudinal information are essential to generate new clinical evidence and support reliable clinical decisions in our patient. And we also discussed that in this context, federated learning, a novel AI-driven approach, may address data privacy concern by enabling the collaborative training of algorithms across different institutions, but without the need to share clinical and biological data. We provided preliminary evidence that digital pathology, that is the application of artificial intelligence to bone marrow cytological and histological smears, can increase both the standardization and the accuracy of the diagnosis, and may also support more efficient personalized prognostic assessment. Clinical decision support systems are AI-based tools that can provide real-time patient-specific information and recommendation, helping clinicians make more informed decisions, specifically in those areas in which there is a lack of conclusive evidence from randomized clinical trial, that in general terms in medicine account for around 30% of all the clinical decisions that we have to do. And finally, MDS Copilot platform also incorporate synthetic data generation technologies that may enable the use of high-quality real-world data to accelerate the conduction of clinical trial in the critical scenario of MDS. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for this very fascinating talk. I'm sure there are questions from the audience, but maybe I'll start so people can come up to the microphone or add their questions in the app. You were talking about the development of the tools, for example, to generate synthetic patients and perform clinical trials. So how important is the real-world cohort with which you train these tools? Because I can imagine that maybe even the country where, from where your patients are located, the age of the patients, etc., can make a lot of difference. Also, the access to healthcare could make a lot of difference. So how important is that, and how would you like to incorporate that in the project that you are working on?
This is a very important clinical question in terms of practical implication for the use of these technologies. I think that we have a lot of work to do in this specific setting, but to start with a practical idea, I think that we have as a first point to refer to the repositories and registries that were certified by regulatory agencies as a potential source of high quality clinical real-world data to be used for regulation purposes. And for instance, you know that EUBMT registry completed the full certification by EMA as a data source for comparative analysis to accelerate the approval of innovative drugs for hematological malignancies. I think that we have to start with some source data that are already certified and try to discuss with regulatory authorities about what are the requirements in terms of regulatory agencies that are needed to certify that a technology can be used, a specific technology can be used in order to improve the access to this kind of registry. This is the way that, in my mind, is associated with the most relevant priority to accelerate this process.
Thank you. A question, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Matteo, for the great talk. I really appreciate all the impressive results and the decent studies you have completed. Just apologies if my question is a bit naive. So I noticed that although quite impressive, but in the different tools, the validation rate or the success rate of either synthetic data or the models you generated, there seemed to be a 10% gap that we couldn't overcome. Is there any technical or statistical issue we haven't overcome, and what's the potential direction to fill this gap? Thank you.
Yes, again, this is a clinically relevant question. I think that in general terms, the concept is that the performance of a specific AI algorithms is significantly associated with the amount of data that are used in terms of providing the training and the validation process. So in order to improve the accuracy of the model, we have to provide specific and practical actions to boost the collection of new data for MDS patients in order to achieve a better performance. And I think that, as we discussed before, a specific clinically relevant action should be to try to include also longitudinal information in this very dynamic disease.
So do you mean further increasing the number of patients included and harmonize the longitudinal data?
Absolutely, yes.
Right, thank you.
I have one other question from the audience, which is, did the digital pathology model that you used included cytology slides, or was it only based on histological section?
Yes, again, a very interesting question. We know that in MDS, as always, we are facing with the most challenging and critical scenario, because both cytology and histology are relevant in making a correct diagnosis of MDS. So I think that the ideal tool for digital pathology for our patients should be able to capture specific information both from cytological slides as well as from histological biopsies. And we tried to combine in our model both information coming from bone marrow aspiration and bone marrow biopsy.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I was really intrigued by your synthetic patients. Are you planning to use those only as the referral arm, or can you use those synthetic patients as well to investigate new treatment strategies?
Yes. I think that we should be quite conservative in our approach, and I think that we should try to start with using this technology and proving the reliability of the technology in replacing a real patient as the control arm. This is the more easy way in order to provide evidence for the reliability of this technology. For instance, in MDS clinical setting, in a potential randomized trial for high-risk patient versus azacitidine, we know very well what is the exact life expectancy of real-world patients treated with azacitidine in different clinical scenarios. So the evidence is there. We have to move on new technologies in order to try to translate this evidence as a formal part of the clinical development of a new drug.
So thank you, Matteo. Very interesting talk. Thank you very much. I have asked you this question before, but I will do it again. So my problem with AI, even if what you say today is much more specific, is that AI requires data. So when AI has too little data, AI starts to guess. And we know this, and this is the problem. So it approximates. So, and then I think I asked you before, how do you program AI to say, listen, here is something that sort of makes a pattern, but I haven't got a clue what it is. And I've never so far seen an AI model that flags, here is something new. I can give you 2 examples of fairly recent findings. One is the DDX41 in 2015, and the second is the UBA1 in 2020. Both these were discovered by conventional sort of basic research, genome sequencing and so forth. And this is my sort of main problem with AI, that AI doesn't teach us the unexpected. And how does AI deal with unexpected? For me today, AI approximates, and this is not, as I see it, good enough. It would be nice to hear your reflection around.
Yes, it's a huge problem to be analyzed. I think that you are totally right. The potential limitation of AI is related to the availability of data, but in a more general way, this is the general problem of science. We cannot provide any clinical or scientific evidence without sufficient amount of data. The opportunity with AI is that AI includes some technologies that can improve access to the data that are produced day by day by our clinical institutions and our lab. So there is a challenge, as you mentioned, but in this challenge there is also an opportunity, that is to use AI not only to generate evidence that may be subjected to some limitation, but in my vision, to use AI especially to improve the access to the data that are already there and that are underused for scientific purposes.
But why can't you program AI to identify patterns, even if you don't know what it is, like, unidentified flying object?
Yes, I think that, yes.
It must be possible if you're a good programmer.
Yes, but we have to let's say, accept that in some ways AI is associated with an unsupervised process in order to analyze data. That is not associated with any specific input from the researcher or clinicians. And the power of AI is on this unsupervised approach. I think that the most relevant challenge is to be sure that the results of an AI algorithm is associated with an explainable, let's say, meaning for clinician and patients. This is the most relevant challenge in my mind, because we can have an algorithm that is very efficient in order to maybe improve the prognostication provided by molecular IPSS based on digital pathology. But in terms of potential clinical value for these results, I think that the most challenging problem is to, again, use specific technologies to provide a transparent understanding on how the model works in terms of specific features that are unsupervised at the beginning, to make some conclusions about the patient diagnosis, the prognostication, on the choice of an optimal treatment. In other ways, I think that we don't need to determine at the beginning what is the type of reasoning from AI, but we should provide a clinically meaningful explanation of the results in order to provide, let's say, a certification of the clinical usability of these results in terms of practical decisions.
Yeah, I will continue to ask you.
Yes, yes, with pleasure, Eva.
Arjan.
Matteo, I heard it several times now from you, but still it's puzzling in my mind. So maybe the digital pathology is most easy in that way that you show data, unsupervised, distinguishing the MDS from MPN and AML. So in the data, in an unsupervised way, you can at the end distract the most important feature which make that discrimination. Can you then tell us what was the discriminative feature which make that easy, except from blast counts or cellularity in these cases? That is also the opportunity to have, in line with Eva, to identify new discriminating features, not molecular maybe, but morphologically defined.
Yes. As a first point, as a disclosure, Arjan, of course, if you have a good human pathologist, maybe you don't need for digital pathology. This is a general concept. But in terms of the potential application of artificial intelligence to improve the diagnosis, I think that so the general process is that artificial intelligence can account for more information in the process associated with the final diagnosis with respect than human brain. For sure, human brain is also associated with a specific knowledge about the disease, the morphological alterations that are associated with a specific diagnosis and so on. But the great opportunity associated with AI is to face with a large amount of input data that are 1,000 higher with respect to that a human pathologist is considering in making a final recommendation for a diagnosis. And the challenge for this application is that in this large amount of information, there is a value, an additional value that can be used in order to refine the human process for formalizing a diagnosis. This is let's say, the challenge.
But in the data sets you did, could you already then identify that fine-tuning of the diagnosis already, because it's in the data, and you did.
Yes.
Dus you extract new discriminating features based on all the data input you have.
So you mean is artificial intelligence?
Yeah.
Yes. Artificial intelligence converts complex images into numbers, and these numbers are used in order to define patterns that are significantly associated with the starting question. For instance, the diagnosis, the risk of leukemic evolution. And if the system works, again, the next point is to provide an explainability process for all the algorithms in order to validate in terms of clinical perspective, what are the features and the clinical meaning of these features to answer to a specific question.
And then I think a final digital question from the audience, maybe in line with the previous discussions. Beautiful talk. Can this algorithm be used to generate synergistic data for conditions such as CHIP? So also
Oh, yes, yes. I think that, there are many possible clinical applications for synthetic data, but the general point that is also the limitation for this technology is that synthetic patient can, let's say, capture only the value that is already present in a real patient. So in other terms, if you have a real data set of CHIP patient with some information, the synthetic patient coming from this real data set are associated with only the clinical value and the clinical information that are already included in the real patient. Nothing new is created in terms of, let's say, additional biological and genomic information. And I think that this is also important in terms of the reliability of the information that are associated with this kind of generation powered by artificial intelligence.
thank you very much for that clear answer. I don't see any other questions. So I think I want to thank you first, Professor Della Porta, for your wonderful talk. Thank you very much. And then we have come to the end of this session, and I would like to invite all of you to join the welcome reception downstairs in the exhibition area. Thank you for your attendance.